So, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Northcoders is turning 5, so we are here to celebrate our 5th birthday. And what better way to do that than to speak with some of our incredible Northcoders women in tech and hear their very own journeys. So, since 2016, we have graduated over 750 Northcoders, and Lucy Woodhead is one of them, and she joins us here today as one of our brilliant Northcoders alumni. We're also joined by 2 of our very own developers and tutors, Vel and Izzy. So what I'd love to do first of all is to go around the room so you can tell us who you are, what you do, your journey into the world of tech, and so we can learn all about you. So Vel, do you want to kick us off?
I'll do my best. Hi everyone, I'm Vel. I'm one of the tutors at Northcoders and have been with Northcoders for nearly 4 years now, about 3.5. It's a bit surprising to hear that Northcoders is turning 5. I was like, oh, I've been here for quite a while, for quite a long part of this journey. It's been great fun. I did the boot camp and then was hired as a tutor. And yeah, here I am.
Amazing, thanks so much. Iz, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I am another tutor and developer at Northcoders. I have been teaching for 2.5 years here, and I also did the course beforehand. So like a lot of the tutors kind of had experience of being a student and then going to teaching, which has been wonderful. And yeah, just do lots of lectures and just general supporting the students and one-to-ones, and yeah, that's my job.
That's me. And Lucy, if you could tell us your journey as well, that would be great.
Hi everyone, I'm Lucy Woodhead. I'm a software developer at GlaxoSmithKline, or GSK. They are a healthcare company. I've been a software developer for 2 years now. I graduated from Northcoders early in 2019. It was the best decision I made, and I love learning every day. And outside of work, I love to be involved in lots of community activities.
Which is a reason why we've decided to drag you onto this event this morning, as your insights in the community and your contribution to the tech sector are very well known and widespread, and that's a brilliant sort of advocate for women in tech, especially coming from Northcoders as well. So thank you to all of you for joining us today. So one thing I would really love to know, as somebody who works for a tech company but cannot code, I would love to know from all of you, or one of you, whoever wants to say, what was that initial sort of drive to be like, I want to work in tech? Was it, always a passion, or was there something sort of significant that led you into this sort of industry and this career? I'd be really keen to hear about your thoughts on that. Who's going to be the first speaker?
Everyone's waiting for me.
I'm going to go for Vel first, just because you're on the top of my screen.
Yeah, sure. My decision to transition into tech came at the back of, I was quite dissatisfied with what I was doing at the time. I was working in a call center in customer services and complaint handling. And at one point I took the decision that it was character building enough up to that point, and decided to stop doing that. I had a bit of a period of just wondering really what to do for as a career, and decided that it was a career, it was a progression that I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to dedicate my work hours into getting better, learning new things, and having more to learn at every opportunity. And tech just naturally lent itself to that. Languages undergo so many changes, even within the same year. There's new versions of things coming out. There's new languages coming out all the time as well. New frameworks, new packages. So it's just been really, really great, and it does provide me with that continuous opportunity to develop and learn and expand my knowledge.
Amazing. Oh God, you make me sound like I should learn to code. Izzy, what about you?
I've always kind of been quite interested in this kind of mixture of like logic and kind of creativity. Like I did like A level, I did biology and maths, but then also like French and English, and people are like, what are you doing? Like what are you doing? And I feel like it's just because I've always been kind of interested in the kind of the logical steps in problem solving, but also had a kind of creative flair and like theatre and things. And I feel like in my head for a while, maybe coding was only the kind of logical kind of mathsy side of it. But actually, when I tinkered around and played a bit, it was like, oh, this is really fun. Like you could create like anything, and you've got so much power in, you know, it's there's not just a rule book of how to do something. Every time there's a problem, you could face it in a completely different way. And that's what is really cool, seeing like students go through the course. And, you know, some of the material, which, you know, we think is great, has been the same for quite a while. And then suddenly a student comes up with a completely different approach and is like, I never even thought of that, which is great. So I think for me, I had that in the back of my head, and then I tried it out a bit. And then as soon as I started, I just really enjoyed it and kind of ran with it, and then did the boot camp, and it fulfilled all those boxes, which I was like, I hope this does this and this and this, and like logical, but creative, but problem solving and stuff. And it did. So yeah, that's why I love it.
You're so passionate. Oh my gosh, like just listening to you, I was like in awe of you just then. And Lucy, you're obviously not new to the tech world, but you are our most recent person who has been through the Northcoders bootcamp. So what about yours?
Thank you. So I spent a few years as a project manager. I actually did music at uni. I didn't really know anything about coding at all. But then during my time doing project management, I was working on a lot of things which were about website transformation, app development, stuff like that. So that's where I first came across, you know, Kanban boards and things. And then also working with developers. And I was so fascinated by what was on their screens. And, you know, I could see like a simulation of the app that they were making and the code. And I'd always be so interested. And part of my development as one of my work goals was to just pick up a little bit of coding. And I just thought it was amazing to just type a little bit of HTML and then see it reflected on a website that everyone was going to see. And I just felt really proud, and that was really addictive, and it never stopped, because then eventually I obviously pivoted and then retrained completely. So yeah, that was the initial sort of fire, and it's never stopped. And yeah, just touching on what everyone else is saying, just the fact that you get to learn something new every day. It's a fast-paced environment, but you know, it's just so rewarding all the time to learn something new, and I'm never bored.
Yeah, and I think that's something that pretty much everyone I ever speak to says, is you will never, ever, ever be bored working in this industry and doing this role. And thank you so much for sharing all of that insight. I think it's really good to have people moving into the sector that all come from very different backgrounds and very different journeys. And I think that's valuable to how we're going to sort of progress and you know, continue to create diversity within the tech sector here in the North. So thank you so much for that. Something else that I'd really love to get your thoughts on is when you first decided that you wanted to move into the sector, how did you feel about moving into a sector that has always predominantly been male dominated, or were you completely unaware of this when you moved into the sector, and how you feel about that, I suppose? So Izzy, I'm going to pick on you first for this one.
I think I definitely had thought about it, and one thing that did help me was that when I was at uni, I did a Code First Girls kind of mini course, and that was really nice. It was a really nice environment to pick up some skills. It was HTML and CSS that we were doing, but it was something I was conscious of quite a bit, and I kind of almost went into my first day at Northcoders being like, okay, like I will be standing my ground if something happens, like, you know, like I kind of almost geared myself up to it. And then, you know, when I got here, it was actually, you know, absolutely fine. And I think in the wider industry, that is definitely that I'm conscious that is the case. But I like to think with kind of Northcoders and people being attracted from different backgrounds is what is going to really help make the industry more diverse. So that's why, I think Northcoders is a really nice route, because it isn't like, you know, you have to be fit a specific mold and have been coding since you're 4 in your bedroom or anything like that. Like, it's really nice seeing people from loads of different backgrounds going through that. But it was something I was definitely conscious of, and was trying to like gear myself up to it. But it's you know, has been fine.
And Vel, what about you? What were your thoughts initially?
I struggle to answer this, because it's not like I wasn't aware it was predominantly a male-dominated industry, but it was just not something that ever factored into my decision making. It was something that I tried, and it was in fact my partner who transitioned into development a couple of years before I did, and he was like, "Oh, why don't you just give it a go?" And I did, and I loved it, and it was so logical, it was so structured, but creative as well, like Izzy was saying. And I thought, yeah, okay, fine, I will do this. And it never occurred to me that there being more males in the wider industry would ever be a blocker for me to transition into this career change, and to, to do well as well, to achieve what I have achieved, and to, continue to grow and continue to develop. And I'd like to think I was right. The community around Northcoders in particular has been so supportive. I have all my colleagues behind my back, and we are behind our students' backs as well. So there is just so much support, such a good community that we end up creating. And I'd like to think that the environment we have is quite constructive for people from all different backgrounds. And it just provides that opportunity for them to code in a nice, calm environment before they maybe go out into the wider world, and have that confidence, build up that confidence that actually I can code and it doesn't matter what gender or race or anything I am. So yeah, exactly. But for me, just to kind of answer the question itself, because I waffled on a bit, it didn't really factor in for me when I took that decision. It wasn't something that I wasn't aware of, but I just decided to do that regardless.
And Lucy, being in a slightly different position to Izzy and Vel, who are still with us at Northcoders, what were your sort of initial thoughts and current thoughts on this in the industry?
When I first decided to go into coding, I think because I'd already had a little bit of experience and already sort of worked in that environment or in an agile way, it wasn't really something that naturally, it didn't affect my decision making. But what was interesting, it was other people that almost planted the seed. They'd say to me like, "Oh, you're going into this industry, it's all men, blah blah blah," and I was like, "Oh," but actually, like Val said, when I got to Northcoders, I was in a very welcoming environment, and it wasn't really something that played on my mind at all when I was learning. I was very comfortable, and everyone was brilliant and inspiring, and so that was amazing. And then obviously when I left and into my first role, I was the only female developer in a male team for quite a long time, but actually I had such a positive experience, and everyone was so lovely, and they actually ended up sort of being my allies, and very happy for me to educate and to go and empower and do extracurricular activities, because they completely support that we need to change things. So that was amazing. And every single time, every team I've worked in, the developers around me have been incredible. And where I've noticed a bit of attention, I guess, is actually from maybe other staff or other people who are not aware. So I think it's actually sometimes changing the perception of people who are not developers, because they think that to be a good developer, I can't be chatty or I can't do things or something like that. So it's been quite interesting, I'd say, to be out here in the field. But yeah, first and foremost, all of the developers I've worked with closely have actually been very kind and very welcoming, and helped me and jumped on board with the mission to get more women into tech.
Yeah, and that's how it should be, isn't it? Like Vel said, it shouldn't matter your gender or your race or your background. It shouldn't matter at all, and shouldn't even become a factor. And I think that's what we are all working towards. I think we've all got in general sort of in a sector, we've got a long way to go, but I think there are so many positive changes happening, and constantly like a positive trajectory is taking place, that it gives me a lot of hope and a lot of excitement for our sector in the future. What I really loved about that is because the three of you has obviously come through Northcoders, the fact that Northcoders being your sort of, I suppose, biggest step into the tech scene, and you all having the same feedback as, well, it wasn't really a factor and it didn't really matter. That's what I love about Northcoders. And I don't code, I'm not a software developer, but I actually left my previous role because my gender quite clearly mattered in the team that I was in, and that made me feel small and it didn't make me happy. So I made the decision to leave. I actually interviewed with Chris. So for all the audience watching, Chris is our CEO and a co-founder of Northcoders. So I interviewed with Chris, and he asked me why I was leaving my previous role, and I was point blank, blunt and honest, and I said, this is why I'm leaving. And Chris was shocked and taken back, and instantaneously in that first meeting made it clear to me that I would never have to deal with anything like that working for Northcoders. And he has been true to his word, and I've never ever had to even question it or think about it or be upset about it. And that's, you know, from a non-learning perspective of Northcoders and from an employee perspective of Northcoders, they have that culture and that commitment through and through. So that makes me really proud to work for Northcoders as well. From a non-technical insight there for all of the listeners watching today. So I suppose, like, going on from that then, what advice would you give sort of women or younger women, wanting to enter the tech world? What would your advice be? Lucy, I'm coming to you first.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really good to leverage the communities around you. And I think that I only discovered some of the meetup groups whilst I was at Northcoders. But I think that it can be quite powerful if you're aware of these from a young age. And there are quite a lot out there. There's loads now popping up, especially in the north. And I think that it's just really nice to be able to connect with people early on, especially other women who are also working towards learning to code, because then you have that solidarity and you can ask questions and learn together or go to hackathons together, because I know that sometimes it can be quite scary when you're first learning and then going to a big event. So I think, really leveraging on the communities around you, and then also getting a mentor, because I think there's this idea that you can only sort of have a mentor if you're in the working world already, but not necessarily. You can have them for many reasons, and also it's just really helpful for confidence building, because often they've got some experience, so they can help you or talk through a problem that they've resolved, and then that helps you when you face something similar. My two key things would be to get a mentor and also leverage the communities around you.
Amazing. And Val, what would your advice be?
I'd like to echo what Lucy was just saying. There's loads of communities like Code First Girls, Innovate Her, and many other, which I am, of course, forgetting right on the spot. So that would be, even though those events might not be happening in person at the moment, there's still initiatives, there's still conversations happening online. There's loads of events like this one, for example. The second advice that I would like to give is do some coding. See if you like it. Actually sit down in front of a keyboard. It doesn't have to be the fastest laptop. You don't have to have any specialist equipment initially. There's loads and loads of online resources where you can just try yourself at it and see if that is something you enjoy. Like Lucy was saying earlier, there is that instant gratification, especially with things like HTML and CSS, to make a tiny change in your code, and that is immediately reflected on the website. And by these small incremental steps, you get addicted to that feeling of accomplishment, of success, of I make a change. And I think that is very, very powerful. So by all means, like, go out, look for events, look for mentors, look for different communities that you can take part of. And all of these are for free. Like, there is just so much information at the moment out there for free, and people who are willing to spend time with you and help you with it. But equally, code. Sit down and do some code.
And Izzy, do you have anything to add?
I think what I would probably add to what both of them have both said, which I fully agree with, is also just sometimes embracing not knowing something when you're a developer, because there's this idea that developers, like if you're a senior developer or if you are even just have been doing it for a while, you know, you should know 100% of everything you're doing and never forget things anytime. You know, developers Google all the time, or, you know, I think there was like a senior engineer at Google who posted his search history for a day. And some of the stuff was things that, you know, we teach in our first week of the boot camp. And, you know, you don't have to retain everything all the time. And I think that imposter syndrome is so, it is an issue, and it's very, you know, valid concern that people have, even, you know, I don't know where I'm going with it. Yeah, the imposter syndrome kind of makes you feel like, if I don't know this thing, then I'm not good at it. And, you know, that undermines your confidence and, you know, makes you think that you shouldn't do it anymore. But actually, people use search engines all the time. They look things up, they look at notes, they try things and it goes wrong, and then they fix them. So you don't have to get it right first time, and you don't have to remember everything all the time. And I think sometimes that's almost a false barrier that people put for themselves. They're like, if I don't know this, then I'm not good at it. But that's not the case. That isn't the case with developing at all.
Yeah, I would like to kind of jump on the back of that and say, I search for things, I teach all the time, just because there is so much to know. And like I said earlier, things are always changing. Things are always, there's always new things coming out. You don't suddenly wake up and know how to code. It's a gradual process, and the more you learn, almost like the more you forget. But I'd like to think that you just become better at searching for the right keywords, for the right phrases and ways to find out a problem. And I'd like to think that you also become a little bit less afraid when there is a big error message, because there are a lot of very big and very small error messages, and they can be quite scary at first, especially, but they are there to help you as well. I disagree with the red color of error messages being used, but because it just looks way too extreme. Oh no, if I don't handle this, no, it's okay. Really.
Yeah, definitely.
Everyone encounters errors. Absolutely.
Like, yeah, senior developer, they, you know, get errors all the time, every day. It's just getting, exactly like Vel said, more used to dealing with it, and like, it's how you deal with it when you don't know, and when it goes wrong. That's important.
Yeah, definitely. I can't remember the last time I spoke to a senior dev that doesn't have the exact same opinion. So I can vouch for this. Completely true. Just highlighting what Izzy said on a slightly different note about imposter syndrome. So I suffered from this massively when I joined Northcoders, because I have always worked in roles with people, talking to people, talking to companies, and being around people, but I'd never worked in the tech sector before. So I was absolutely terrified when I first started, because I had so much to learn. I felt like I was a fish out of water. I tripped up about the second week into the job because I didn't realise Java and JavaScript were different things. So, you know, I suffered from this massively. So I had to pick myself up and sort of get to grips with my ability, and the team that I was working with, and one of my colleagues, Hannah, supported me a lot in helping me learn and feel that, you know, I had the confidence to learn something new. And even though I can't code, entering the tech world, you know, even in a non-coding role, can be really, really daunting. So that was definitely something that I had to overcome. Lucy, I'd like to direct this question at you. As you said, you joined a solely male team originally. So I just wondered if this is something that you had experienced, or whether sort of Northcoders set you up so well when you went into that role that you didn't experience that, and what your own opinion of this was when you sort of entered that role aside from Northcoders.
Northcoders definitely prepared me well, but I think just naturally, yes, of course, I experienced imposter syndrome because there is so much more to learn, and there's always more that you can know. But I do think because I'd learned how to learn, that was definitely one of the things that helped when I got there. And again, I think I'm someone that just always tries to utilize who's around me, and I'm like, can you just tell me how this works, or can we sit down and do this? And over the years as well, I think that using the words imposter syndrome, it's almost got that negative spin on it already. So I think that in recent months I've decided like it's not that now. It's always a learning opportunity, always. And when I have these problems or something, rather than just sitting and thinking, oh, I can't do it, or oh, why am I here? It's that's never helped me resolve the problem. And I'm finally getting to that point where I'm not wasting time anymore, sort of sulking about it, and actually just going and asking people who can help me, going on YouTube, going on Google, training myself up. And actually that's the sort of thing that's helped the most to overcome that, and that's what I would try to tell other people as well, because I think that, I don't know, you can maybe just sort of wallow and get into a spiral if you sort of keep talking about imposter syndrome, or that you have it. And I think we need to come out of that actually, and turn it on its head and say, actually no, it's all a learning opportunity every time.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree with you more. Vel, Izzy, would love to hear your thoughts on this from a transitioning perspective, I suppose, from going from a Northcoders student to sort of a developer and tutor. So yeah, who wants to go first on that topic?
Well, one thing, if I could just add, I think that I know you're saying, I was going to say Lucy, but you're both Lucy. Lucy Galway. You're saying coming from like, you're always working in people and then suddenly it feels really different. One thing that I think is often kind of underestimated in tech is how, important people are. Because I think you get this idea that it's just one person with a screen and then you're kind of just you and the code and that's it. But actually communicating your code to other people, or other people explaining it to you, or collaborating on a project is something I have realized through being a student and a teacher and developer, is so much more crucial than I think the kind of wider world necessarily realizes, and that those skills of kind of, I'm used to talking to people, how am I going to deal with tech, actually a really good thing. Like, it's a really positive thing to bring to a workforce, is like, talking to people about your project and things like that. So that's something I would add as something I realized as I've done this, is that the people around you and communicating with them is just as important as the physical code you write. Yeah.
Definitely. So when you and Vel, I'll direct this to yourself. So when you transitioned all those years ago into the sort of developer and tutor role at Northcoders, from being on the bootcamp yourself, how did that feel? Was it terrifying? Was it natural? Like, I'd love to hear how that sort of came about for you personally.
It was quite a happy moment when I interviewed, and Sam, who was the head of the classroom team at the time, said, yeah, we'd like to hire you for the job. I was just jumping around and just being super chuffed about it, because I enjoyed being at Northcoders so much that I didn't want that to end, really. And then I had a couple of days off and started, like, just continued my commute as normal. And I was like, am I a student? Am I a tutor? And it was a bit tricky because, at least in my head, it was definitely something that I would call now imposter syndrome, even though at the time I didn't have the exact words for it. I definitely felt that initial anxiety, but I think that comes with any new venture, anything new that you start learning. And even if you have been in a career for a while and you just transition into another company, you would still feel that initial nervousness and anxiety, and have some doubts about, do I really deserve being here? Am I really good enough? Have these people just lied to themselves by giving me this position and this opportunity? And I think something that Lucy said earlier on Imposter Syndrome, that at one point you have to almost coax yourself. And I'd like to highlight that you can, I don't know, I don't think beating yourself about it is that beneficial, because you're already quite nervous, you're already quite anxious, and then saying, this isn't helping me, stop doing this. That makes it even worse almost. So I think on one hand, being really kind and gentle to yourself, and almost talking to yourself as if, you know, you are your younger self, if that makes any sense, whatever. But I would tell myself things, okay, we'll just give it a go. Let's just go and see this student and see if you can answer it. The community around me has been really good in that if I didn't know it, I could always just flag someone down and just say, please give me a hand. And I even now, I still sometimes get into situations where I need to ask other people on the team who have more experience in a particular area. So I just deal with it a lot better. And I know now that's not a sign that I'm not good enough. It's a sign that happily, like luckily, there is still more to learn. And that for me was one of the key things that got me into this profession, really. So yeah, I know imposter syndrome well. And at one point, you just need to gently ease yourself into it and dip your toes and then your feet and everything else into the water, and do the work. That is the thing that makes you the most comfortable and confident.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that one thing that I've also, on that same kind of thread, one thing I've realized over the few years is that when you're teaching students, you know, they appreciate it if you're honest about, rather than just trying to blag an answer and just be like, oh, it's probably to do with this, blah, 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 blah. If you actually kind of say, you know what, I'm not sure, or even like I've forgotten, or you know, anything like that, it's like, let's have a Google together, or let's have a look into it.
Yeah.
I know a lot of students that have appreciated that in the past, and I also think really helped me when I kind of got over the hurdle of I can't show any weakness or misunderstandings to students because they'll doubt me. And then it's like, I don't mind if that happens because I can't retain everything, like we were talking about earlier. But one thing as well that when I started teaching, I suddenly started thinking like, oh, do I fully understand this? You know, I understand it enough to use it. And then I went out my way to kind of think, okay, if I'm going to have to explain this to someone else, let's have a deeper look into it, so I know that I understand the next level down, even if they don't ask questions on it. So any experience in kind of communicating your code to someone else has elements of that. You know, we do pair programming on the course, and students have to communicate what they want in code to their pair. And that in itself, the action of doing it really makes you not just throw things on the page and hope it works, but actually think it through another level. And I've definitely had that through being a tutor and having to communicate a lot.
I think something you said just now, Izzy, was really interesting to me. As tutors, perhaps the most it's more obvious than not, but I think this goes for any developer in a more senior position, and now for Lucy Woodhead as well, now that she is into the job for like a couple of years now, and there's junior members of staff that she might be taking under her own wing. There is initially that kind of desire to not show any weakness, like you said, and you must know everything and you must be 100% on absolutely everything. I think that is actually quite a detrimental attitude to yourself, because it's just not fair on you. It's impossible to know everything about coding. And I also think it's not helpful to the person you are mentoring or to the junior developer coming either as a student on our bootcamp or as now a graduate and finding their job into the tech industry, because it almost sells them this false ideal that they need to be like this. And I have had students actually approach me and say, I'm really happy that, you know, you don't know everything almost. And like Lucy said earlier, finding a mentor, and that mentor, you know, not knowing everything, finding things out together, learning how to learn. These are much more precious and important skills. And we're all human at the end of the day. We all have, you know, things that we forget, things that we might need to remind ourselves of, and that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective on this topic, I must do this every day. So my sort of, for anyone watching that doesn't know exactly what I do, is my role at Northcoders is to talk to the companies we work with and our clients and support them in joining sort of not only the boot camp, but the further programs that we do. So our upskill and reskill programs. So I find myself in the position a lot of the time where I might be talking to people who are substantially more technical than I am. So I learned very, very early on that I need to tell people that I am not as technical as they are, as they will assume that I understand everything that they say. And at first I felt exactly the same as everyone on here has said, you know, how do I say to someone that I don't understand what they're saying and I'm not following, you know, the types of technology they're telling me about, and, you know, the tech stack that they use. And I very quickly realised that that's completely fine, because my role is not to code. It's not to know all of everyone's tech stack that every company we ever work with will ever use, and that's okay. And the response I've had from everybody that I've spoken to has never been, oh, you're stupid, or how come you don't know this, or why don't you know this? It's been, okay, fine, cool, no problem. And they talk to me in a way that they know that I'll understand, in a really respectful way as well. And then as we sort of progress through conversations, we bring the specific people in who come and do those discovery calls, so the technical elements of the calls, and talk about sort of our curriculums in more in depth, and that's how we work. And yeah, so what I'm saying is, I suppose, in very much agreement to everybody else, is don't waste your precious time and sacrifice your mental health feeling bad about not knowing something, because it's completely fine, like everyone has said here, to not know something. And if you're just like, I don't know that, or I need help, or I have a question, or, you know, I'll go and find that answer out for you because I don't know it myself. I've never come across anybody within the tech sector, not just here in the North, but anywhere, that's ever been disrespectful of that. So that is another factor that makes me so happy about my decision to move into this world, because everybody that I've ever encountered has been so respectful, and that's a, you know, a huge tell and show of the people that are in our community. So just wanted to add that snippet onto there.
Absolutely. There's so many acronyms, there's so many abbreviations and texts and things, and you're like, whoa, what is going on? And I think working with students continuously, you have to remind yourself, let's revert a step back in the language that we use. Like later on in the course, we can do the running with all the jargon ever, but initially, let's just take it really slow and simple. And that helps, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. So again, along the same lines, I'd love to hear the opinion of you all on the topic around unconscious bias towards people within the tech sector. I mean, here at Northcoders, we have, I think our statistic is 27% of Northcoders graduates are women or non-binary. Now, that stat is way, 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 way above average for the tech sector. It's not 50-50, it's not as high as it should be. And, there is a lot more work that we can do at Northcoders and that the wider community can do. So I suppose from yourselves, I'd love to hear your opinion on how can we identify and avoid unconscious bias within our communities and within our workplace as well. Who shall I go to first? Lucy, I'm going to you.
So I think sometimes people think that training isn't useful, but I think that training is useful if it's then also sort of embedded with some actions after. And I think that within companies, I think a lot of it comes from like leadership teams, and we need to see other people calling out. We need to see really good representation at the top, and then that sort of helps everyone else, and then we can all act on that behavior as well. And I think that if you have training, don't just do it like once a year. You've got to have it at regular intervals, and then make sure that there's real actionable things that you can do. And again, going back to, I always talk about the community, but I think sort of just having lots of allies always really helps. And I think that by helping to overcome unconscious bias, I think that we need to instill it at a young age as well. So I think training should be at schools, but also in companies and everything in between. And only then can we really feel like we've made success in overcoming it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Vel?
I completely agree with Lucy. It's a process which has to start at all levels of society. And I really liked what you said about having this representation within higher management, within senior development. So in terms of companies providing those opportunities to women and non-binary people to leadership positions is hugely beneficial, because when you hire juniors and perhaps they're female and they see that there is a person in a leadership position, it feels quite good as someone who has been in that position, and it makes me feel more secure. It makes me feel that I will be listened to, that there is someone to turn to if I needed to. It makes me feel like the contributions I make to the team will be respected, and there is a path forward for me. I wouldn't be always at this junior position because another female has already made it before me. So that is one side of it, but there is the other side of it where we need to attract those people in the first place into the industry. And Northcoders has had a number of initiatives over the years to attract more women onto the course. And later on, I think Lucy Galway, you might be better suited to discuss those, as you have been part of all of those wonderful conversations. From my perspective, really, I think seeing those role models, seeing those women in more leadership positions has been quite crucial, and it has normalized the process of trying hard and being rewarded for it as well.
Yeah. Izzy, do you have anything to add?
To be fair, nothing new.
I completely agree.
I think, Lucy and Vel just did a wonderful job. I just fully agree with everything they were saying, to be honest.
Yeah, no, and so do I. One of the things that I'll just point out, as sort of Vel started to say about sort of initiatives that Northcoders put in place to do what we can to attract, a variety of people through to Northcoders is we're currently, actually very recently, we announced that we're offering 24 scholarships to the boot camp specifically for disadvantaged and underrepresented groups within the digital industry. So this particular scholarship is for anyone residing in Greater Manchester or Lancashire, and basically this is an excellent example of how we can give something back and attract people to the tech industry that maybe haven't had the opportunity or haven't had the platform or just haven't had the option to do that, and putting things like this out there is what is going to help our industry continue to grow. One thing that I not deal with unconscious bias a lot with, but notice a lot with, is from a hiring perspective. So the team that I work on, we support the Northcoders at the end of the boot camp when they're sort of moving into work and looking for their first roles, and supporting companies expanding their tech teams. And I think something that I hear a lot is, we're looking for someone who's going to be a cultural fit, someone who's going to come in and fit our culture. And I think I understand what you're saying, and I understand where you're coming from, but to spin it on its head and look at it from a completely different perspective, rather than going out there and looking for the cultural fit, look for the cultural add. Who's going to add something to your culture that maybe you don't have, and maybe that's what you need, because if we don't have diverse groups of people working together in the same team, or the same company, to working towards the same goal, you're always going to get a biased result. And that is, to me, in sort of what I experience, the most obvious example of unconscious bias, because it is very unconscious. Nobody realizes it happens, because people think, we want someone to come into our culture, and we want something to fit, we want people to be happy, and we want them to fit us, or whatever. And I think, yeah, you are right in what you're saying, but you're almost looking at it the wrong way. So that's something that myself and the careers team side of Northcoders try really hard to shout about and talk about and advise on, because as we diversify the tech sector and diversify the teams, and from the start of the bootcamp with the scholarships, and supporting people with this platform, all the way through to supporting them in their first role within whatever company and whatever team, Northcoders and all of us here are trying to sort of fill that cycle almost of diversity. And I think the more that we do, and the more that we put into that, the result at the end, the better the result at the end is what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to echo how having conversations on unconscious bias, firstly, like Lucy Woodhead said, not just having the conversations, but supporting those by actions. But also having those conversations at a level, as Lucy Galway was saying, even at the point of recruitment and approaching different companies. I quite dislike the term cultural fit, and cultural add is probably the most positive way I've heard someone phrase it, because surely a company wants to grow, it wants to develop, it wants to expand in terms of numbers, but also in terms of how well it's doing for its employees and for itself as well. And I don't think by hiring the exact same block model almost of a person who is the cultural fit every single time, I don't think that contributes to growth. I think it can be quite isolating for teams if everyone looks the same, talks the same, does the same things. That is just so limiting, and it leads to really poor technical decisions, like software where underprivileged people cannot use, for example, or just isn't fit for purpose, really.
Yeah, definitely. Could not agree more. And yeah, I think just being aware of it as well, from a personal perspective, being aware and taking action when those things become aware. And I think not taking offense. I think one thing we're really good at Northcoders is never taking offense. We're a very honest community, and if you sort of said something, or if you made an error that you weren't necessarily aware of, you would be called out on it, but in a really sort of respectful and polite way, in order for you as a person to grow. And sort of address that. And I think that's really positive. I think so many people take offense because they're scared of saying the wrong thing, but I think I would 100%, and I'm sure the three of you agree as well, if I was to say something wrong, I would be mortified if somebody didn't tell me and I was completely unaware.
That's a lot worse than having your views slightly challenged,
because we all come from different backgrounds, and we all have different experiences from childhoods, and sometimes we learn things that to us are completely innocent, but we don't know what the upset and harm that they can carry until we're challenged on something. So I think living and working in an environment where that can happen in a positive way is really beneficial, and I think can only produce, you know, positivity at the end of that. I feel like I could talk to you through for absolutely hours about all of this. I feel so, it's a sunny day and I feel really excited, but unfortunately I can't keep you forever. So I think the last sort of thing I want to ask you all is, you know, to tell us and the audience what your biggest success or your biggest, you know, learning opportunity or something that you've been super, super proud of from your experience and career in the tech industry. So I'll give you a quick second to think and I'm going to look at who looks like they're ready to answer first. I'm going to go for Izzy because she's super smiley, therefore I think she has an answer.
Oh no. I'm trying to think of one specific thing. I mean, I would say sometimes, this is very specific to being a tutor, but there are some lectures which are really tricky content, like fundamentally something that consistently on the course 98% of people struggle with, and it takes a few days for it to click, basically. And I would say when I deliver those lectures and I feel like I've kind of done it justice and explained it, even though I know that it's just a hard thing and I haven't made 100% of people understand, but I've started them off on the journey of understanding that is a really, like, I do actually feel really proud after those lectures, because it is, like, as we said, you know, talking about code and communicating it can be a challenge. And when it's something which is so fundamentally mind-bending almost, like it can be a bit daunting to go into the lecture, even though as much as it is to be a student, because it's like I have a responsibility to explain this thing to people in a way that they'll understand it. And when I feel like I've done that well, that's a really, really proud moment. And then I would also say on a more kind of development side, one of my favorite projects I did was my final project at Northcoders as a student. So that was working in like a group of 4, and we made this app that did like augmented reality, and it was just really cool to see a project, like all the things I'd learned, like pieced together. So even though that was a while ago, that still kind of remains like we have made a thing and it does stuff and it's great. That's kind of, yeah, that's probably two examples for me.
Oh, 2 examples, more the better. Vel, I'm coming to you next.
Sure. So on a more personal level, last year there was the initiative from Innovate. I think it was 12 days of recognizing female coders, and they recognized me in one of the days. I was proper giddy about it because, yeah, I was super chuffed. Part of me was like, you've not done anything to deserve this, and part of me was like, but I did. Yes. It was great. Yeah, so that was a very proud moment for me, and it actually allowed me the opportunity to just step to the side a little bit and say, I've done a fair bit in 4 years. That's been quite great. I think on a more professional level, we've been developing different language tracks that we offer as part of the upskill program. And I've started learning and developing the language track on C#, and just seeing, it's almost like recreating the boot camp, but for a much shorter time. So it's aimed to be like a 2-week thing. And taking that from its original concept and having everyone's input, because loads of my colleagues have helped out with that hand. I have not done that myself, but just having everyone's work sort of culminating in delivering the lectures of this language track that I've been so involved in has felt quite rewarding as well.
Definitely, and very well deserved. I would just like to point out, you're too modest. And Lucy, what about you to finish us off?
Well, I'm sorry, but I can't pick one either.
That's fine. Give me them all.
I think, first of all, obviously going through Northcoders was incredible, and I really do consider that to be one of my biggest successes. I think the second thing I have to mention is I started a new job in the middle of a pandemic, and I feel like this job was sort of, I guess it's made me do that jump now, and people would say that they consider me to be more mid-level, which is kind of a new thing, but it's really exciting. And I've not actually met any of my colleagues yet, but to be able to deliver impact and value remotely, I feel really happy about that, as well as picking up new languages and new frameworks and stuff, and then learning the subject matter as well. So I feel really happy about that. And then also I've recently done some teaching with Code First Girls. So I was teaching the data in SQL, and yeah, hopefully Vel and Izzy will back me up on this. And it's just, I've always been on the student side, and this is the first time where I've actually, you know, been the teacher, and they're trusting me, and I'm teaching that. It's a whole new world. It's a different experience, and it's been absolutely incredible. And I think it's well, I really appreciate all of the tutors at Northcoders, and I think just going through and learning all the nuances of teaching and seeing people grow. And you know, in week 1 we were just doing some select statements, and then by the end they were showing me their projects, and they were so proud. And then when you hear them getting job offers and internships, it's like, honestly, it's such a good feeling. And I think that has to be one of the biggest successes as well. So yeah, sorry, there's a couple there, but I don't know, there's just so much positivity. Love it.
Well, do you know what? I think, like I said about Izzy, the more successes and more positive memories, the better. We can't be complaining about that. So we'll finish off there. As like I said, I could keep you all for all day, I'm sure, to talk about all of these exciting things. And I just want to thank all 3 of you for joining me to talk about your journeys and your stories. And you all absolutely radiate positivity and are excellent role models for people in tech, women in tech, and for the tech community in general. So I can't thank you enough for joining me today. Thank you again. And yeah, I owe you all a massive favour, and have a wonderful day.
You too.
Yeah,
Thank you
very
so
much. Lovely to
Bye,
see you.
bye, bye.
Bye.